Today I'm talking with Valerie Khoo, who is the founder and CEO of Australian Writers Centre, based out of Sydney and actually with offices across Australia as well. And we have a wonderful discussion about what it actually means to build your profile, the difference between branding, and actually how to find your passion. And some of it might seem kind of simple, but you have to really ask those questions. And what she's suggesting is, how do you produce useful and valuable content to actually display your thought leadership? Because as she says, you can't actually outsource your thought leadership. I love that. Yeah, so we talk about being helpful as the number one key to being relevant in a cluttered space online. So we kind of talk about that as well, and then talk about leadership as well. So a fascinating discussion. We go into so many things. You're going to love this one about branding, social media, personal profiles, digital profiles, you name it, with Valerie Khoo, founder and CEO of Australian Writers Centre.
Overwhelmed with online or just wanting to learn more about how you can build a successful business amidst all of the self-appointed gurus, big buzzwords and empty promises? The Breaking Digital podcast by Doyle Buehler tells you exactly what smart entrepreneurs need to know to escape the clutter, get clear of the confusion, and pass the bullshit of building and growing a successful business online. It's about digital leadership and delivering the best value for your business online to your audience. Now, here's your host and author of the book on digital leadership and online marketing, The Digital Delusion, Doyle Buehler.
So welcome back. Today I'm with Valerie Khoo from the Australian Writers Centre. She's the founder and CEO. So welcome, Valerie.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, fantastic for joining us. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you kind of got started in the great big world of profile and digital and that sort of thing.
Okay, well, I founded the Australian Writers Centre 11 years ago, and one of the reasons I founded it is because I'm passionate about people telling their stories, and that I think comes from the fact that I have been a journalist for many years. Now, I have been a journalist in the small business and entrepreneurial space for many, many years, writing regularly for some of Australia's biggest publications, and during that time, I have interviewed hundreds, if not thousands, of thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs. And it's always been an interesting experience to peek into somebody else's business, but it was also interesting to see who could tell their story well and who could not, and to then also track the trajectory of entrepreneurs who were then able to build their profile and personal brand because they were doing the right things, and those who kind of faded away into, I don't know where they faded away into. So
maybe they just got tired.
Well, or they just slogged away, and they still had a business, but they didn't reach the heights that they could have if they had harnessed the power of building their profile and building their own personal brand. So I think that over a period of time, some years of just watching this, I became really fascinated by looking at the patterns as to who was successful in that area and who wasn't. And what also happened at the time is that people started coming to me for my advice, because I started making, observations about what worked and what didn't for these entrepreneurs, because I literally had that research in front of me after interviewing thousands of them. And so people used to come to me for advice on how they could get more media coverage or build their brand or, have a much wider reach. And for me, it was just something that really came naturally to me. I could have a chat with the person for 10 minutes, pretty much figure out this is what you need to do, because this is your selling point. This is the thing that's appealing to other people, that's appealing to the media, that is the hook that would resonate with most people, because by the nature of my job as a journalist, I had to identify those things in order to write a compelling story. So it's something that evolved over time, and evolved because I had to, talk to so many entrepreneurs and get their stories out of them, essentially. So that's how it essentially happened. Where the reason why so many people come to me to help you build their profile and their brand, and it extends not only to entrepreneurs but also to authors, and not just authors of business books, but authors of fictional books or memoirs or, just regular books, because obviously at the Australian Writers Centre I come across so many authors, and likewise where I was meeting and talking and hearing the stories of so many entrepreneurs, I also meet and hear the stories of so many authors, and again I see the ones who are building their brand and selling tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of books, versus the ones who are just as good in terms of their writing talent but who aren't getting the reach that they need.
That's fascinating. So there's obviously a lot to being able to tell that story, and whether it's digital or not, it doesn't seem to matter. What are some of the things that you're finding enable people to tell that story that keeps people engaged and keeps people captured?
The first thing actually is not even a skill in storytelling. The first roadblock I see time and time again, whether it's an entrepreneur or a fiction author, is that they don't actually want to give people the impression that they are building their profile. They can't actually own the fact that this is something that they want to do. To give you an example, I ran a workshop on how to build your profile last week, and one of the things that people said was his biggest roadblock is that he didn't want to come across as a tosser. He didn't use the word
Toss.
he didn't use the word tosser. Actually, he used a word starting with W, but you
A
know what I mean.
wanker.
Exactly. So he didn't want to appear like he was big noting himself. And just the week before that, I was on a panel at a conference for writers, and one of the writers said, "Oh, we're always told not to have tickets on ourselves because people are kind of afraid that other people are going to think that they're shameless self-promoters." But in fact, there's a way to build your personal brand and your profile without being a shameless self-promoter, where you can do it with integrity and authenticity, and that doesn't annoy people. But in the first instance, you have to actually want to do it. The people who do a half-assed effort, who think, "Oh, I might just try this," but don't really put effort into it, they're not going to succeed anyway. So you need to, in the first instance, if you want to be successful at it, own it and accept that you are putting some strategies in place to build your profile. Because if you don't actually believe that that's what you're doing, it's not going to happen for you.
Yeah, no, for sure. So how do you recommend like overcoming that hurdle in terms of, yeah, I don't want to be a wanker, but I
Yeah.
still want to build my profile. So what do you recommend?
Get over it.
Get
It's a
over
decision.
it.
What else are you going to do? You're not either not going to get over it or you're going to get over it, right?
Yeah.
And you need to understand the fact that many people around the world do it with integrity and do it with authenticity, and a lot of people don't think they're tossers or wankers. Yes, you can identify the shameless self-promoters, but you're going to choose not to be one of them if you don't want to be one of them. So it's not any difficult thing you need to go through or have some strategies. You just need to get over it.
Yeah, get over yourself and
Mm,
make it into a wanker free zone too. Because yeah, you're absolutely
exactly.
right. You can tell what's the difference between talking about what you do and how you help people and that sort of thing, as opposed to just you're the greatest person on earth type thing. So
Yes.
yeah, no, fantastic. So how do you how do you sort of know when your story is authentic then? Because you mentioned that that's a critical component. It's like, yes, you have to talk authentically, but how do you know that?
You know it's authentic because you're speaking the truth. And by speaking the truth, I don't mean revealing all sorts of personal details that you don't want to reveal. You just need to be honest about why you do what you do, about what you're passionate about what gets you out of bed every day. I think the more important question is actually what makes your story interesting and and identifying the things that will resonate with other people. Well, firstly, be truthful about the things that I've just said. But you will notice when you talk to people, like I always talk about, the dinner party conversation or the Sunday barbecue conversation. And if you start talking to people and they just go, "Oh, yeah, right. Okay, that's interesting." They're just being polite. It's not that interesting. That's not to say you're not interesting. It's just that you're not telling whatever you're telling in an interesting way. But when you get the reaction that's, oh my God, yes, that is so, that is really what I want to find out more about, then you know that you're onto something. You've clearly resonated with somebody. So I think that you don't always have to, do things in a work environment. You can test things out just socially to see what people connect with and to see what people find interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But are there sort of certain jobs or certain activities that have that sort of surprise response? Like,
Yeah.
could you create something like that for, say, an accountant or, that?
Yep. Yep. I think that one thing that you can do to get a story that usually resonates with a lot of people, whether you're an accountant or not, and I used to be an accountant,
Oh,
so
sorry.
yeah. So
Well, there you go. Now we know.
that's right. So I can totally understand where you're coming from, because I think what you need to do is talk about what you're passionate about. So I call that your passion story. And by that, I mean what fuels you and what gets you out of bed every day, what actually is exciting about what you do. And the reason, and everyone's passion story is different, because the reason why you became an accountant might, not you, but why someone became an accountant might be totally different to the reason why someone else became an accountant, and so on. And you need to, again, be truthful about it, because it's that passion, whatever it is that you're passionate about, that people can relate to. They may not relate to the fact that you're an accountant. They may not relate to the fact that you do debits and credits and have an intimate knowledge of tax law. But they can relate to the feeling of passion, and that is infectious. And the thing is, when people can identify that someone is passionate about something, whatever that might be, they want to cheer them on. It's just a natural instinct that we have. It's why we watch movies like Rocky, 7 sequels later, big box office success, because we want to cheer on the protagonist. We want to cheer on the hero. We want to cheer on Rocky, and because he so wants this so bad, right? He's so passionate about this.
Yeah.
So I think that identifying your passion story, whatever you're passionate about, is important. And the thing often people say is, but secretly, I'm not actually passionate about whatever it is that they do, right?
Accounting, yeah.
And that's okay, because here's the big surprise. My overriding passion is actually not writing. I'm the founder and CEO of the Australian Writers Centre, and I certainly have an interest in writing, and I do love writing, but I have a bigger passion than that actually drives me. And my bigger passion, and I'm honest about it. I tell people that my bigger passion is helping people achieve what they once thought was impossible, helping people achieve their dreams. If it happens to be in the realm of writing, because I have all the tools and strategies to help people do that, then great, because a lot of people's lives change when they get a book deal, or they're finally published, or they change careers to become a writer. So I actually have an overriding passion that isn't necessarily my vocation or profession, but I'm honest about it, and you can see how that connects.
Yeah, and that's sort of where I guess that follow your passion too. You still have to sort of slow it, not necessarily slow it down, but you're right. Not everybody is involved in something that's very passionate. But how can you express that outside of that specific role? So taking that accountant in example. Maybe they're doing it because they love helping businesses, find that extra profit or something like that.
In fact, when I interview, and interestingly, I've interviewed a lot of accountants as well, and often they might start off saying, "Oh, well, my dad did it and my brother did it," and I said, "No, but tell me what you actually love. Tell me, like, I really dig and ask the right questions." And they often do say, "I just love it when I can see a business turn around, and I know I've played a part in making a difference to that person's life and their family's life." So sometimes it is not the actual skills that you're passionate about.
Yeah, it's how you actually put them in place.
It's the impact you can have on someone's
Yeah,
life.
no, for sure. So then you talked a bit about, the passion. How do you actually then build that into a profile? that gets
Yeah.
people sort of saying, hey, yeah, I know John, blah, blah, blah.
It's not just the passion story, of course. You need to be able to articulate your business story, what your offering is, which may be different to your passion. You know what I mean? So I think that one of the key issues that people have, and applies to entrepreneurs and writers, is that they aren't able to articulate their offering succinctly or clearly. And I will ask somebody, so what is it that you do? And half an hour later, they're still talking, and I still have no idea.
Sounds like my problem.
I'm sure that's not your problem, Doyle. But it's so important. Like when I'm interviewing someone, it's my job to listen to them for half an hour.
Okay.
But you're going to lose a customer or a prospect if you can't articulate what you do or what you're about in the first 30 seconds. So it's kind of like about your elevator pitch, isn't it? It's being really clear. And so many people aren't able to refine what that is. As I said, it's also with authors. I often ask authors, so what is your book about? Oh my God, 5 minutes later, I feel no compulsion to buy the book because I still don't know what the book is about. They give the whole backstory of the book.
Oh, okay.
Of why they're writing the book, but I still don't know what the book is about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's important to have that as well. And because that is a story that you're going to tell time and time again. And I think then it's also asking yourself the question, what do I want to be known for? And being clear in your head on what do I want to be known for, right? Because if you aren't clear on that, then your messaging is going to be diluted. It's going to be all over the place. So if you want to be known for let's say, I am known for helping people tell their business story. I help people build their profile. So even though I may on a weekend Instagram a photo of my dog looking really cute, because that's the kind of thing you might do on Instagram. There might be a subtly placed book in the background, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
or the types of magazines that would, reflect on what I want people to know me for. Do you see what I mean? So you need to be clear on that, so that whatever you put out there online to build your profile has has a connection to that.
Now, why do you think that so many of us, and myself included, because it takes time, but why does it take? Why aren't we all good storytellers? I don't know. Why do we have such a difficult time articulating that? Because if you like what you're doing, if you love it, whatever, this is what I do. Why don't we see more of this? Like what's slowing us down? What's stopping us?
Just practice, just not trying. And one thing I encourage people to do is, when they're thinking of their passion story or their business story or what do I want to be known for, sure, you might go for a walk and have a think about it. But if you just let it sit in your brain and swirl around, it's very hard to articulate. You need to write it down. It's as simple as that. When you write it down and force yourself to write it in full sentences and not in bullet points, you are forced to articulate it in a succinct way. But when you let it swirl around in your brain, it can become a bit of a mess in there.
Especially with my brain, yeah.
Many people's brains.
Okay.
It certainly happens to me. And when I find myself not being clear on certain messaging or not being clear on how to tell someone's stories, I force myself to write it down in full sentences and using no bullet points, and it becomes clear.
Yeah, fascinating.
A lot of people do not bother with that step.
So maybe it's because a lot of us are lazy. Is that part of it?
No, I think people just haven't realized the benefit of writing it down.
Yeah,
Get yourself a cup of coffee, spend 15 minutes writing it down. So much can become clear.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that step seems so easy, but yet it's so it's missed all the time. Yeah. Like I have my handy little notebook and I write write down stuff all the time, but I'm still a little bit confused sometimes. What would you recommend in that case?
Full sentences. You're
Full
probably
sentences.
writing
Okay.
down notes. You're probably writing down effectively, bullet points, full sentences with no bullet points, and you will be surprised at the clarity you get.
Oh, okay. Well, that's excellent advice.
Not stream of consciousness, like not checklists, full sentences.
Okay. No, fascinating. I'll have to give that a go.
Dude, let me
Yeah.
know how you go.
No, for sure. So how do you sort of then, we talked about profile, we talked about passion. How do you then kind of convert this into the digital space? So, are there new things that we need to learn? Are there new things that we need to do? So we sat down with a book, a piece of paper, we've written stuff out or even typed it. What do we need to do next to engage that audience in the digital space?
I think the most exciting thing about the digital space is that it's low cost or no cost. And the opportunities that are now given to entrepreneurs and authors are fantastic, because in the past, to get the kind of reach that you want, or to get any kind of good reach, you needed to have money. You needed to have big bucks to have an advertising campaign or to spend on a marketing campaign or, something like that. And so only the people who were able to take that risk or had the money, or in the case of writers, only the writers that the publishers deemed appropriate, good enough to bankroll, got that opportunity. But now you can take the opportunity into your own hands, and you can build your profile using the digital space, using digital tools that just simply weren't available to you before. And so by digital, I mean, of course, a couple of things. Firstly, you need some kind of central hub. Now, that hub might be your website, or it might be your Facebook profile, or it might be your Instagram, whatever. For most people, it's a website, so that when people Google you, they can find one particular spot where they can find you, find out more about you, and get in touch with you if they need to. But apart from a centralized hub, it's then thinking of which digital or social media platforms you want to use. The thing is, there are so many social media platforms these days that it's easy to get overwhelmed, to think, oh my God, I'm going to have to dedicate all this time. I'm going to have to learn them all. You don't have to learn them all. You just pick the one or two that either you enjoy, because if you enjoy it, you're going to do it, you're going to use it, or that your target audience hangs out on. So I would suggest picking like one of one and one or of the other. But ideally, you're picking ones that you enjoy, because then you're going to do them.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because I get that question a lot. It's like, what social channel should I be on? It's like, well, where's your customer?
Yeah,
Number one. Yeah, and do you
exactly.
enjoy it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because if you don't enjoy it, you're going to have one post every 3 weeks, and it's just going to be a complete waste of time, right?
Yeah.
So, and other digital platforms that aren't social media include, of course, things like, do you want to create your own newsletter, like an email newsletter that goes out to your followers to keep, for people to be up to date with what you're doing? If you make a commitment to that, you've got to make sure you're providing really valuable information. If you can't sustain regular valuable information, then pick a different way to reach people. Digital space also includes what we're doing now, podcasts. So is that the sort of thing that might be appropriate for you? In the first instance, I recommend just starting with number one, your central hub, and then number two, just one or two social media platforms. You can think about your newsletter or your podcast or whatever later. But importantly, I guess number three is, what is a way for you to find out who people are who are interested in you? Now, of course, you might have followers on Instagram or friends on Facebook, but really, I still believe in the value of having an email address of somebody. So if your various platforms can send people back to a place where they can exchange their information with you, either because they want to sign up to your newsletter or get a gift from you or something like that, like a useful resource from you, then building your database, building your list of people, I think is paramount in building your profile.
No, fantastic. And I love how you kind of separated things out, because I believe that a lot of entrepreneurs and small businesses feel that they can be on one place and they can build a sufficient profile on that, but you really have to build it across all these touch points in your digital ecosystem.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's going to fall flat. People are not going to see you. They're not going to notice you.
That's exactly right. And I think once you start off with those three things, later on, if you're doing that well, later on you'll actually find yourself thinking, "Oh, shall I have a podcast?" Or if you don't want a podcast, you'll start thinking of, should I appear on other people's podcasts? And then you'll start thinking of other things in the digital space. But just start off with the simple things first and then look at the other stuff down the track.
Yeah, start small and then kind of go from there. One of the problems that we talked about earlier is that you have a lot of people kind of not expressing their message properly. With the advent of digital, obviously we're going to see that. Do you find that we're maybe seeing a bit, too much of, not so good stuff because people don't kind of go through those steps to make it good?
It works both ways. So yes, I do see what you're saying. So I certainly see people who are not creating useful or valuable content. They're not actually putting out quality stuff. Some people are going to content farms and trying to outsource their thought leadership, which is kind of ridiculous, because how can somebody in a developing country tap into your 20 years of experience and write thought leadership articles for you?
I love that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do see that. But you know what? The cream rises to the top. You can, if you put out crappy content on a regular basis, people aren't going to come back to you. It's as simple as that. However, I also see the other side of the coin, where people spend 6 months and they go, "I need to study Facebook for 6 months before I put out a post."
Yeah.
And then I'll get the post and I'll show it to 6 of my friends to make sure that I'm doing it the right way. Some people are also overthinking it. Look, if you put out a post that has a mistake in it, you just go and edit it.
Yeah, exactly.
If you put out a blog post that has something, not ideal in it, just go back and edit it. That's the beauty of the digital space, is that can happen as well. It's not in print forevermore. So it does work both ways.
Yeah, no, for sure. So do you see it changing though, over time? Like, do you see it kind of, are we going to be able to create more quality, or that's basically how we're going to stand out, is by creating that quality? Or do you see it maybe just becoming this large blah of blah, like nothing really stands out anymore?
Yeah, I do think that we are reaching a stage where people, as in people in the world, are being bombarded with so many different messages and so many different types of content that a couple of things. Number one, yes, cream will rise to the top. Number two, I don't believe that a lot of people have been trying to create content with incredible frequency, but because they're creating with such frequency, it's hard to come up with really good quality stuff when you're trying to create a thought leadership piece every 2 days or something, right? So I believe that it will get to a stage where people will recognize that quality is much more important. And even if you're releasing that every 3 weeks instead of every 2 days, that's okay, as long as you keep your touch points with other people through other channels. So you might have only a blog post every 3 weeks that is really good quality, but people are still staying connected with you, whether that's on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. So you're still part of their world in a sense, but they pay attention when you do release something good. So I do believe that people are starting to not just consume anything that comes across their path, because 10 years ago, you'd consume everything because, there wasn't that much of it. But now there's so much of it that it's so vital to also build that trust with people that you're always going to produce something of quality, because when you build that trust, they will make sure they pay attention next time you put something out there.
So what would be your number one recommendation then for breaking through that clutter of being online?
I think you got to be helpful. I think that what a lot of business owners and thought leaders, they are good at having opinions. So they'll have opinions about trends, or they'll have opinions about the latest legislation from the government, or whatever. And that's fine. That's really good. But you also need to then be helpful to your customer or prospect and this is what you need to do to adapt to that new legislation in government, and these are the steps you need to take to adapt to those trends that I've just outlined. I think that if you don't follow up with some how-to, then it's just you talking, your opinions, which is nice, but I think people want the leadership. People want the how-to.
They want the leadership. I like that. Yeah. Because without it, that's kind of where the mess happens. Is if you're not being a leader, then, you don't have any followers, so to speak. So
that's right.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. I mean, I love talking about digital leadership and all that too. The fascinating subject. So, no, excellent. What else do you see coming down the road, Valerie? Is there different ways of doing this? Is it more kind of going to be about personal branding, or more about profile, or more about passion? I don't know. What do you think?
One thing I do see coming is that I truly believe that the digital divide is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And what I mean by that is that I'm still shocked because technology is changing at such a rapid pace, and there's so many tools that are available, so many different ways you can reach people digitally. I think that there are some people, like I was just at the gym earlier today, and someone next to me said, "What's a hashtag?"
Oh.
And there are also others who don't know how to log into their own computer.
Oh, wow.
They don't know that after you type in the name on your browser, you have to press return.
Okay.
So this is reality. These
Sorry,
are all
I shouldn't be laughing, but yeah, okay.
These are all true stories,
Wow.
which means that I truly believe that the digital divide is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so the people who don't take the time to understand just the basic things, they don't have to be IT people or anything like that. They just need to understand sort of, basic things, are going to fall behind, like really behind. And it's going to be so much harder for them to catch up. And like I said, they don't even need to become experts in social media or anything like that. They just need to understand some of the fundamentals, like you need to press return after you type in a URL into your browser bar.
Fantastic.
It's just going to get massive, this digital divide.
Cool. No, really, really good. Just one last question in terms of is there a difference of how would you start somebody to say helping them pull out their passion, right? Helping them understand that. What could you give, one instruction or a couple to say, this is how you pull out your passion to build your personal brand, your profile?
What excites you? What makes you get out of bed in the morning? I think that, and if that doesn't spark some, ideas of what you're truly passionate about, cast your mind back to when you were 12 years old. What did you love doing? What did you truly love doing? And what aspect of that do you do now that, you actually love?
Yeah, no, perfect. And spend some time thinking about it and write it down too
Full sentences.
In full sentences. All right. Well, I'm going to go start writing right now. Well, thank you very much for your time, Valerie. How can people get in touch with you? Through what social channels or websites do you have?
Sure. Well, if you want to find out more about the Australian Writers Centre, go to writerscentre.com.au. We're in Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, and online. We have a huge online community. If you want to connect with me, I'm at Valerie Khoo, that's Khoo, on Twitter and Instagram. I'm the Valerie Khoo in Sydney if you want to search for me on Facebook, and you can find my personal site at Valerie Khoo, KHOO.com.
Excellent. And obviously you just started with one or two though, right?
Yes.
And now you've got a lot. So everybody out there, you don't need to start with everything.
That's right.
Take a step back. All right. And as usual, we'll actually have those links on the website when it's ready, thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast. So we'll have all those links there. So excellent discussion, Valerie. I really appreciate your time and thanks for joining us.
It was my pleasure.
Thanks, and we'll see you online. Thank you very much for listening to Breaking Digital, the podcast for smart entrepreneurs wanting to become true digital leaders in their industry and to own online. If you have any comments on the program, please feel free to connect on Twitter at Doyle Buehler with the hashtag #OwnOnline. I would really appreciate it if you could share this podcast with your network, as I'm sure they will get some value from it for building their successful business online as well. You can find the resources that we talked about, as well as the transcript and full podcast for download on thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast or on iTunes or on SoundCloud. I'm Doyle Buehler, and I will see you online.
Thank you for listening to Breaking Digital with Doyle Buehler. While he goes and makes a sandwich, you can find all of the notes, links, and details on this podcast by visiting thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast. Go on and click that now. www.thedigitaldelusion.com/podcast. I'll definitely click that. If you'd like a free copy of the book, The Digital Delusion, How to Overcome the Misguidance and Misinformation Online, just send an email to doyle@thedigitaldelusion.com. See you online.